Adam Schefter reporting Indianapolis Colts Carson Wentz out indefinitely with an injured foot. What now? This is Explicit Fantasy Football. Earlier today, Adam Schefter reported on Twitter that Carson Wentz missed the third day of training camp for the Indianapolis Colts. That was followed up by a report from Ian Rappaport that Carson Wentz not only is going to miss the entirety of preseason, but he will also be visiting Dr. Robert Andrews. Never a good sign. Now, who was under center for the Colts today in practice for the first team reps? Well, that is second-year quarterback out of Washington, Jacob Eason. Not a good sign for your fantasy team. Now, since it's only the third day of training camp, it's probably not going to be Jacob Eason under center for the Colts week 1. That's good news. Now, bad news is free agency a little thin right now. The obvious choices, I have 3 top of my head. 1, Blake Bortles released by Green Bay after Aaron Rodgers returns. We know Blake Bortles has experience making players fantasy relevant in the past. So, not terrible news right there. Second name, Alex Smith. Ooh, not amazing for fantasy. Could be good for PPR, could be good for the running backs, could be good for an offense at the very least for moving the chains. I think Frank Reich could make a guy like Alex Smith work, and I think he could make that offense competent, and he could make it somewhat fantasy relevant, but we are still talking about downgrading these players. Now, third guy that makes probably the most sense in my mind, who you got to coax out of retirement, Phillip Rivers. Played with Frank Reich last year. Played in this offense last year. Probably would feel a little bit more comfortable in the second year. Maybe you can coax them out for one more year. Make these guys slightly more fantasy relevant probably than a guy like Alex Smith. No matter what we're doing is we're downgrading these guys across the board. Carson Wentz does have the ability to make guys a big play. None of these guys anymore that I'm talking about are really big play quarterbacks. You're talking about guys in Blake Bortles who is erratic on the deep ball. You're talking about a guy in Alex Smith who really can only throw those dink and dunk balls, and you're talking about the same type of guy in Phillip Rivers, but at least he was in this offense last year. Now, one guy that you're probably still taking in the first round is Jonathan Taylor. You're talking about a guy that is immensely talented, that this possibly boosts his ability to get more touches. Now, those touches are going to come at the expense of a box that's probably a little bit more packed. You're going to see more linebackers, more safeties in there because they're not worried about this passing game anymore. But one thing I do know is I don't think Jacob Eason is going to be under center week 1. I think you're going to look at him going at a Phillip Rivers. I would not be surprised you see this guy come out of retirement. Wouldn't be surprised you see Blake Bortles on this team. Wouldn't be surprised he's flying in Indianapolis right now. This is Explicit Fantasy Football.